Sorry, just got to remove the thing from the middle of the screen. Call to order this District of Clearwater regular council meeting for Tuesday, November 16th at 2 p.m. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are fortunate to be gathering together on the unceded territory of the Simpcw people who have been caretakers of this land since time immemorial. Are there any late items to add to the agenda? Seeing none at this time, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Moved by Councillor Frizzell, seconded by Councillor Herring. All those in favor, vote your life away. Thank you. That passes. Adoption of the minutes. Any errors or omissions? If none, mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Herring. Yes, I see you there. All those in favor, go ahead. Was there an error on that, Councillor Herring, or something you wanted to add? No, you just had your hand in the air like you just didn't care. Okay, that's passed. No items under number 6, development and zoning. Unfinished business. Cemetery committee appointments. There is a recommendation that council appoint the following members to this Cemetery Advisory Select Committee for 1-year term. Drake Smith, Crystal Wadliger, and Anita Cat Thomas. Any questions of staff or discussion on this? This is great. We're finally getting this one underway. A lot of people wanted this for a lot of years. Can I get a mover and a seconder on the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Sims, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All those in favor? And that passes. No public or statutory hearings, presentations, and moving on to delegations. Trans Mountain and Bannister in the room today. I am going to walk my laptop over to them so that they can talk from, I believe it's somebody else's desk here.
Okay. Trying to put this on. Okay. Hoping not to be pulling up Britney Spears. Okay. All right.
Just say, can you hear me on there?
Can everyone hear me? I don't know why I did that. You can hear me. So thank you everybody for allowing us to be here in person, which is really exciting. I just wanted to start off by introducing a couple of people that I brought with me. So I've got Colin Brain, who is our project manager for Spread 4B for the Trans Mountain team. And I've got Gary Norton from Bannister, who is the project manager for Spread B for Bannister. So I've got them in the room as my technical backup, should there be any questions that I can't answer, which happens. All right, so we'll move past the title slide and we'll get into the update. So as of just last week, we're actually at 39% completion for the entire pipeline, which is really exciting. The lion's share of that is definitely in Alberta, but we are starting to chip away at the BC portion. The total workforce that we have working on the project is over 1,000 at this, or over 11,000 at this point in time, and we are still striving towards our mechanical completion date of December 2022. That hasn't been updated in a while, so I would expect to see an update forthcoming, but we don't have it yet. Because we will not only update our schedule, we will probably also update our costing. We are still considered a $12.6 billion project. But the exciting thing that I talk about a lot when I come to this meeting is that 1/3 of that is getting spent in the North Thompson. So there is a silver lining to it all. So in the District of Clearwater, we've got a tax revenue increase once we get into service. Of course, there's school district taxes and hospital taxes and a bunch of other things that go into that, but it will more than double the property tax or the taxes available to the community. We have the community benefit agreement for this area of $390,000. And then, of course, with since retired, Leslie Grew, her passion project. I didn't know that she ever thought sewer would be her passion project, but here we are anyway. The water and sewer facility upgrades of coming in at $3.1 million done by local businesses. We also have lots of employment and business opportunities for Indigenous, local, and regional residents. And I will skip over to the next slide. And I'll scoop myself already. We've got 130 local hires to date. And so we do have that hierarchy of prioritization for Indigenous, local, and regional hiring. Our numbers are very, very strong within CIMP, of course, being so close to home. And as far as total workforce we're talking about, our projections around 700-ish in the peak of winter 2021, 2022. The nice thing about having locals is the next portion of the presentation, which is accommodation. So hire local people, they can stay at home, then we don't have a housing issue, or less of a housing issue. We are using commercial, rental, and RV accommodation. And then, yeah, of course, anybody who's local is more than welcome to stay at home. I'll go to the next slide. As far as our peak workforce goes, we're really going to see it January to March, right before breakup. That's the timing that we're going to see those numbers fluctuate. We have our Christmas break, which is 2 weeks long, and when we come back in full force in January, that's when you're going to see those numbers rise. And the other thing to consider is that we do have workers spread out everywhere from Avola to Barrier. So it's not completely only housed in Clearwater. We do have people in a variety of locations. We'll go over to the next slide. This is an oldie but a goodie. I use this one a lot, especially for anything that can go out to the public. So there's still a lot of jobs and procurement opportunities because of the nature of the pipeline. Different businesses and different types of workers are needed at different points in time during construction. So I really do encourage anybody who's interested in working on the pipeline or offering any sort of procurement opportunities to go to transmountain.com/jobs or transmountain.com/procurement. As far as the procurement registry, there is also an option to log your local accommodation, your basement suite, if you're looking to rent out anything like that. And just a couple months ago, Bannister did go back through that list. And they reached out to anybody who had previously logged interest in doing that, as well as people who had registered for jobs. So I know it can feel sometimes like you're putting your information into a field that looks like a black hole, but just a couple months ago, we had them reach out to people who are on this list. I'll go to the next slide. So we have two main Trans Mountain facilities here. We've got the Clearwater Camp, like I mentioned, a capacity of 550. It opened in October of 2020, which was right around the time where we didn't have that many workers in the area. So it wasn't utilized very heavily, but now it is full. So the camp is full. And we have people coming in all the time, and we're constantly kind of trying to see which portion of the pipeline has how many rooms allotted, and do they actually need those rooms? And there was questions. We have our COVID isolation ward. The question becomes, how many rooms do we need in the isolation ward? Can we release those rooms out to the workers? So there is heavy optimization of the camp being used right now. And then we have our Vavenby yard. There's a small picture of it there. It's our stockpile, it's our construction yard, and SRG is also using it for their wood sort facility. There's lots of people coming and going there every day. And it's really kind of our hub, I would say. Go to the next slide. Here we have our construction overview, and I'll go one more. So this is a map of where our pipeline runs in the community of Clearwater. I wanted everybody to kind of take a look at that, and you know, line 1 is happily operating through those areas, and in this portion of the project, we don't deviate from our route, so we will be following the same route again. As of right now, the construction methodology through the district is open cut. And there is some portions that are being considered for trenchless construction. But now with Bannister on the ground, they arrived September 1st. They're working through some of the construction methodologies. Our PM put it really well just before this meeting, that we give them the parameter of what we're trying to accomplish. They take it away and they think up the engineering, how they're exactly going to do that. Next one. So just some stats. I like numbers, so you're going to like them too for a slide. We have 74 kilometers is through this spread. You'll hear us say spread a lot. The CER refers to them as segments, but nevertheless, this is 4B. It goes from Vavenby, just after the turnoff into Vavenby, through Clearwater to Darfield. We've got Bannister Pipelines, who are GCC here. I've gone over a lot of them. The water course crossings are, there's a lot. There's 56 in this spread. It's not the most out of all of them, but it's still a lot, and there's some very significant ones. Our major crossings are of Raft River, which is complete. Man Creek, which is the majority of it is complete. There's still some casing to be removed. And then there's the Clearwater River DPI, direct pipe. So that's actually, some of the work is already occurring there, but it'll continue over the winter. Once again, there's that magic date, December 2022 is our mechanical completion. Yes. I'll go on to the next slide, and I want to talk about communication and notification. This is an example of a notification that would go out to a landowner who would have any sort of immediate contact with the pipeline. This is the one that went out for this area, and you can see that the anticipated construction date ranged from September 2019 to March 2021. We are going to go past March 2021. So at that point in time, we'll put out another notification. That one would be in the category of a good neighbor notification, whereas the original one that went out satisfied our regulatory commitments. What it does is it explains the type of work that's going on. I always think of it in a sensory type of thing. What am I going to see? What am I going to hear? What am I going to smell? Where's it going to be? Those are the big questions that everybody wants to know. They do get done by mail delivery. We do take out advertising and digital media notifications that get pushed out based on geo-targeting. I do actually believe, pardon me, I misspoke earlier, that Canada Post had a little bit of a hard time triangulating the Clearwater postal code. They kept telling me that there's 200 residents in Clearwater. So I said, okay, that's not right. Let's just send it to this whole section of the map. And so there might have been some people in Heffley that got the notification. I'm not really sure, but VOE seems to be a little bit difficult for Canada Post at times. Nevertheless, we endeavor to send it out in as many methods as possible. Of course, our notifications are also sent out to Indigenous communities, key stakeholders, things like the hospital, the RCMP, fire, things like that, places like that. Pardon me. I'll go to the next slide. There is a really great feature on our website for this area. It's transmountain.com/Clearwater. It will pick up on where you're located. It'll zoom into the map, and it will talk about any of the construction that's happening in the area. The little dots are different colors because they indicate different things, whether they're active, whether they're future, what they may look like. So I always say that our website is the source of truth. And so if there's confusion about timing or kind of what's going on, that's definitely the location to start. We'll go to the next slide. And then there's also enhanced notifications. So when we notice that there's going to be some construction activity that could have additional impacts on top of what would ordinarily happen through construction, that's when we end up using these larger signs. There were some in the community a couple of years ago, but I believe that we're going to have to revisit it. It's got some stats on it about how much money we've spent in the community, and that number keeps going up. And so we need to replace those, but it has our information on it, how to contact us if there's a pipeline emergency, if you're noticing anything as well. There's also options as far as digital. There's postcards that we can send out. So if as community members, especially councillors and mayor, you can put it through to your CAO. If you're getting a lot of questions, we can look at how we're communicating with the community, if we can beef things up a bit to ensure that the message is really getting out there. I'll go to the next slide. This is also a really handy slide, except for it doesn't have the actual issues phone number on it, but I have a box full of business cards that do. And so if anybody has any issues, inquiries, concerns, questions, they can call our 1-866 number. If it's deemed to be, we have different timelines in which we respond back to people. We basically put an issue or concern into an urgent or a non-urgent category. Urgent would be, there's a light shining in my bedroom and I can't go to sleep because you guys put something up. Okay, we need to get on that. It's something that we can address quickly, and then, you know, we can kind of figure out where we need to go from there. Non-urgent would be, when are you coming through my backyard? And at that point in time, we would connect you with your land agent and we could do all of that. But this mechanism is great because it's CER regulated. So that means if you call this line, if you email this line, we have to answer you. So there's lots of times where people are like, well, I talked to so-and-so and I didn't get an answer. And you go, well, who's so-and-so? Who are you talking to? And that can get really frustrating. There can be a lot of runaround with that. So this is the best option. If you have questions, if you have concerns, to talk to our issues and inquiry lines. And I actually saved myself because the last slide has the number on it. So whew. We can go to the last slide. The info line is, you can send an email to info@transmountain.com or the 1-866 number that's there. You can also find your way to that from the Trans Mountain website if you need it as well. Yes, exactly. So we have a dedicated team. The team has grown over the years. I think we have up to 8 people that work on this info line. And so they answer everything, they triage everything. It comes to me, whether it's a traffic question, a health and safety question, an access question, anything like that. I'm the telephone operator that would connect somebody to the answer that they're looking for within the team that we have. That is my presentation. So thank you very much for allowing me to come today. Like I said, I do have both of our project managers in the room if there are any technical questions, but if there's any generic questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
So just say up to one line there. Any questions online?
Yeah, are there any questions from any of our virtual counselors? No. All right.
Okay, any questions in the room? And when they ask a question, you just
Yes.
regurgitate.
Try and keep them short. No, I have a bad memory.
Questions for anybody? Dave? Sooner than I thought. I think it's a little sooner than I applied. Other than that, no question.
Yeah, I mean, the completion date was our goal based on the timelines that we thought that we were going to be able to get regulatory access, lands access, all of those things. So it is definitely based on real construction timelines. It's just, however, we've had some delays.
I'm gonna say, it's gonna be a challenge. I'll ask the easy one first.
Okay.
Does Bannister or Kingston have a vaccination policy?
Yes, we do. So it actually just came into place fully within the last, I think it was a week. Oh, sorry. The question was, do we have a vaccination policy for the project? And so our vaccination policy fully came into effect. I think it was about a week or 10 days ago. And so it is expected that our workforce and our subcontractors be vaccinated. If they are not vaccinated, they then need to get screened every 3 days at their own cost. So we have the means to do that within the Clearwater camp here as an acknowledgement that there's a little bit more limited access to screening. But yes, that is the policy of Trans Mountain.
And that's for both Trans Mountain and Bannister?
Well, Bannister falls under Trans Mountain. They operate under the same, they are us.
And then the second question was, is because the project's been an ongoing story, many, many chapters to it. So coming to the end of the story almost seems unbelievable. And I'm wondering, I'm curious about your slides and how you update them, because I don't know if our community is actually ready for what the post-pipeline world might look like. And to be ready for that.
So the question was that the project is finally kind of coming to this close, this crescendo. And so what could, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but how could the community be ready for a post-Trans Mountain world, considering we've kind of been in your space for the better part of five years? Well, I mean, and if you think about Line 1 in 1955, so that's a great question. I know in some other areas, I've been advocating for them to consider whether or not something like a summer student could help. Potentially bringing up a summer student from TRU to help work on some planning based on accommodation and marketing and how the community is going to move into that new chapter, lessons learned possibly from having us be here for so long. We don't have a formula for that, and Clearwater is in a unique position along with some of our other smaller communities. But of course, it's going to look very different here than it will in Chilliwack. So I definitely think that that's something worth having a conversation about, and I'm always open to your ideas.
So that the supplemental to that is having those slides updated on the financial impact. Because I think we've lived with it for so long, we're sort of thinking it's part of our DNA, and it's not.
Right.
And I mean that in terms of even letting accommodation know, so you know when at the end. So textbook next October, I thought we might stay, it wasn't a huge amount, and you're like, no go. But if it's coming to a close, it might be. So how do we work with the partnership with the open up, but still keeping
Right. So the question was, how are we essentially going to make sure that the community understands that things are starting to come to a close once we get our schedule into a place where there's more certainty about when, I don't know, your welcome or unwelcome house guests are leaving. And I think that what I would advocate for is more of these updates more frequently, especially once a new cost and schedule comes out. And then working through the chamber or the group of hotels that we identified last summer when we were trying to work through some accommodation. I know that we ended up putting out a survey through the district, and so I think maybe even one-pagers could be quite helpful, going out to local accommodation providers, local recreation providers, and letting them know that I've heard things like it's going to be another 5 years. How do we do this? You know, and so I think just having clear communications on it, and I'm really hopeful that this next schedule update will be the last schedule update. That would be really nice. And so I'm always hopeful for that. But I think more open lines of communication and potentially just going out there proactively with some of these billboards, but like Trans Mountain signage on like popular trailheads or anything like that could be quite helpful. We can also help. We can also utilize some of the reporting that happens in the community to get the word out about our schedule and our timelines and our workforce numbers.
Lastly, I just want to thank both companies for wonderful generosity. Most recently, boys soccer, and cannot be ended enough how much that meant. And there was a tremendous amount of stretching, and I know that's one firsthand for those boys for those days. It was something that was
We've experienced the generosity coming our way as well. So you guys have been very gracious hosts, and where we can give back, you know that it's important.
Further, Councilor Sim asked a lot of questions there. The presentation answered a lot of them as well. So I'll let you skip away there.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.
I'm just gonna get said here, if you didn't hear that, Councillor Sim asked about
Can you hear this part?
We can hear you. Yeah, we lost Mayor Blackwell.
now. Can you hear me? Because I just had to switch things. Okay, there we go. Heads are shaking. We're good. Whew. We're just gonna start painting on the cave wall from now on, or sign language, one of the two. Anyways, thanks to Trans Mountain for that presentation. I'd love to say that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but I think at this point everybody in the room will go, "I'll believe it when I see it." But they've done quite a lot for the community and helped us through, especially during COVID times, when there hasn't been a lot of business coming from other places. Moving on to item 11, Mayor's Report. A lot of the last 2 weeks for official business has been, on doing agendas and discussions around the office here, has been doing minister and industry calls on the old growth deferral issue. That's come down. There's lots of maps out there from the Ministry of Forests on areas that are covered by that. The red blotches the measles map of BC logging at this particular point. So a lot of discussion with industry to try to figure out what it means. And I don't think industry knows what it means at this particular point. They're working through just how much effect it's going to have. And part of the problem has been that it really hasn't been communicated out well by the BC government. A lot of the management at regional levels really could not answer the questions on this, and it's taken quite a while for even basic discussions on how will roads be rerouted around some of these areas, or will they be allowed to continue to go through some of these areas to access other areas of logging, access salvage, areas of bug kill within these areas, you know, how does it work? And I think a lot of the announcement was put out ahead of the logistics by quite a distance. So I expect to have another ministers call level with Minister Katrine Conroy, and last time it was Minister Josie Osborne. And I've committed to industry to get their feedback prior to that call, so I can at least try to get some of those questions answered to help them all work through this. Beyond that, spent a lot of time talking about COVID tracking. Thanks to Councillor Sim, School Trustee Sim, for connecting me with the superintendent of our school district. Had a great conversation with her last night about the situation in Raft River Elementary and what, you know, basically we can and cannot message out on that. At this point, the Raft River Elementary principal has sent out a letter to Raft River parents, and as I believe they say caregivers as opposed to parents, because it's not always parents, as to the current situation within the Raft River Elementary School. And that's the best information that I have right now. A very well written letter, so we're just going to go with that. Throughout the community, I've also had private conversations with individuals tell me that they have tested positive for COVID through hospital tests. And the concern being there, I would say it's under, I could count on two hands all the cases that have been reported to me. But the concern is that a lot of these people do not know where the point of contact was for them acquiring COVID. So that's a little concerning at this time. I still do have calls in directly with Interior Health, but as it was put to me by somebody within the system yesterday, about noon, the entire Interior Health system that manages emergencies has now been redirected to looking after Princeton and Merritt, with the terribly unfortunate incidents that are occurring there. So it's all hands on deck for emergency disaster relief at this particular point. So we're going to have a lot of patience with them on this, obviously, and our hearts go out to both of those communities. Both those mayors have been on the radio, especially Mayor Spencer Coyne out of Princeton, doing a fabulous job. And kudos to the Mayor of Hope as well for what he's been doing there, hosting a couple hundred people in the dark. Hard times for sure. Remembrance Day attended virtually at the request of the Legion. Good ceremony, good presentation by them. I'm glad to see some of I couldn't sneak out and attend in person because that would have been breaking the rules, but I'm glad to see some of the community showed up and showed their support. And there was an awful lot of people wearing poppies around town, and the generosity and the good deeds going around town are great. And even on following that up back to the Merritt story, just the generosity of people in this community to reach out to their friends and neighbors south of us to offer assistance has been absolutely fabulous during this, following all the crises of the wildfire season. And I'll leave it to that. Councillor Bamford, I believe, is away for personal business today. Councillor Frizzle, I am going to slide you the mic. Nothing to report at this time. Okay, so that takes us to Councillor Herring. I'll mute and you can come online if you say what you want to say.
Not much to report. I'd just like to state for the record, F off 2021.
Duly noted, and yeah, 2021 can hold its own beer, and we're not doing this again. No poking the bear or jinxing for New Year's this year. Moving on, Councillor McKenzie, and just anything you want to highlight.
Actually, yeah, a couple people have reached out.
Oh, I'll mute me and then you can just talk through your mic. Actually, on your try your computer audio.
How's that? Okay, thank you, Mayor Blackwell. Not a lot to report these last couple of weeks. I did actually have a couple of people take me up on offers, someone to talk to regarding mental health and whatnot. A couple of people actually did reach out and needed an ear, shoulder, and yeah, other than that, been a pretty quiet couple of weeks. No internet till yesterday, so I'm just back in the world of internet service again here.
Okay, thank you for that comment. And I popped in at the hospital and talked to Barb Coates for a moment, and she thanks you directly again for your connections with the boys soccer team and your friend from the past that came forward with a rather generous donation for that. So yeah, so that is noted out there in the world. And thank you for your emails and your thoughts the last couple week or so. It's very much appreciated. Okay, moving on to Councillor Sim.
Thanks very much. Certainly in relation to the COVID within the community, anything that's happening in our schools is a reflection of what's happening in our community. And I think that that's something to be very, very mindful of, and especially at Raft River, because those children under 12 are unprotected. So they are at the mercy of the actions of the rest of our community. And I think that the mayor's message of just being really mindful about that. We spent the first part of this pandemic, looking after our elderly. They're now going for their 3rd doses, which I think is really important. I think within all care homes in our area for Interior Health, we're almost at 100%, but now we have those younger students. So I appreciate that message and how we can all move forward on this. To it. I also think it's probably maybe a reminder on how the district could start messaging out what happens when there's a case. I find that there's COVID confusion because the rules change hourly, and what our best practice is and what we can do. And I know the mayor is very good about it, but if there's more that we can do, it may seem frustrating because IH continues to lead the conversation, as does the PHO, but let's all just remember the basics and just put that in. I mean, there's even confusion. Can I go here? Can I go there? Can I not go there? What can I do? Moving into the holiday season, there's a lot of confusion. So that's kind of the struggle within the community, but the success within the community is coming together and seeing a boys soccer team being able to play and compete and not coming in last. And I want to just, in addition to just incredible monetary support, I want to thank the coaches of those teams. There was a beautiful moment when the team, and they were ahead just by 2 minutes left in the game. It looked so close that we might win this game, and the other team, gosh darn it, they scored, and we had to go into a shootout, and it felt like a loss. And why I share this story is because the coach took the team aside and said, you have to understand, we tied the game. And the only reason we went to a shootout is because that's how we had to direct where we played next in the pool. That uplifted those boys, and it just gave them some real vigor to pick it up and to move forward. So our community can be really proud of that entire contingency of who went down. There was no child that did not sweat their ass off. Remembrance Day, being a part of CSS and Raft River was really good. I will also say I was at Raft River today talking about community needs and, sometimes financial disparities within our community. Even just being there, the announcements in the morning, I want to compliment everybody for wearing their masks. They work really hard in that school to keep people safe. So I should have shared that earlier. And lastly, about the old growth deferral, I really appreciate the attention that's being given to this. Despite the fact that the rollout was not great, there's also now those tremors of that insecurity. Do people go forward? Do they start planning? Do they, what do they do? So we're seeing a slow work stoppage because nobody has the confidence. I am wondering if it's worth just a short article in the upcoming newsletter just to alert our community. I know that Councillor Bamford's quite up to date on those things, and even just, doing a summary of the mayor's calls or something like that, but drawing the attention that this could be a big thing. And that's about it.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think the uncertainty on the last point is the biggest issue at this particular point, not knowing what the direction is going to be and how it will affect the community at this point, because there is not that certainty as to how the government wishes to deal with this. And it's definitely having conversations up and down the valley with communities north and south of us. The impact is considerably different than ours. Councillor Taylor, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Blackwell. I do want to just kind of add to the conversation regarding COVID and just really encourage people to please, like, if you have symptoms, stay home, and get tested and stay self-isolating until you get your test result back. We've got to stop the spread as much as we can. And, you know, it's so easy to dismiss things as a bit of a cold. And all the while we could be passing it on to somebody else who can have a much more severe reaction and a severe illness. So please follow the guidelines, get tested, stay home if you're sick. The only thing I wanted to talk about was we had our first hockey tournament in Clearwater this past weekend. The U15s were undefeated for their tournament. So lifted the trophy at the end of the weekend. Huge thanks to the volunteers and the arena staff for making this possible. I did also want to call out one slightly negative thing that we're seeing with the tournaments this year, and that's accommodation. So teams are having to cancel attendance at the tournament because they cannot get accommodation at the hotels. And that's despite like the hard efforts of Tourism Wales Grey and the tournament coordinators trying to like phone around, get them rooms. You know, a lot of our hotel capacity is taken up by people who are booking like 3 or 4 months at a time, and even though they might actually be away for some of those days, they're holding their room. So it's definitely starting to have a real impact, and you know, the concern is that there'll be a longer term impact. We have a really good reputation for the tournaments that we put on in Clearwater, and there's concern that we'll see people not consider Clearwater as a future tournament destination. So I did want to kind of call that out and see if there's anything we can do to try and figure out a solution there. That's my report.
Yeah, thank you for that. On your last point, I had the exact same discussion with the Mayor of Valemount and Representative from McBride about the impacts of the last time Trans Mountain did a spread through construction where they through Jasper and Mount Robson, and a lot of the accommodation providers did the same thing, including the sled accommodation providers. The effect, long-term effect being back then, that the sled recreation group from across the prairies did not actually return to use accommodation for 3 or 4 years, and that entire section of the tourism economy had to rebuild itself, even though it had been on a pretty steep trajectory of filling every hotel room in that region before, in wintertime, before that project section had occurred. So I think there's a lesson to be learned there, and I think it would be maybe good for Tourism Wales Grey and us to share that lesson, that you need to make room when you can make room and try to make compromises to fill in the regular tourism economy, or it sets up a danger where we're seen as not open for business for more years than just the project time. So that's an excellent point. And yeah, thank you for your good words on COVID spread. Delta is a different variant. This thing evolves all the time. We really do need to treat it as what it is, an evolving virus, which the longer we don't do the right thing is going to stay with us. I just got to plug in my computer because the battery's died, and then everything just stops again.
Mayor, just while you do that,
Yeah, go ahead.
I just, on the heels of that, because that's so wise, it ties into the conversation about TMX and, you know, charting what does life look like afterwards. I'm also wondering if there's maybe room for, you know, our accommodation sector to recognize that 2 years ago when rooms were $89 and now when they're, you know, at $229, that too sets up a precedent. So to keep that mindfulness moving forward, and I really liked what Jasmine was saying about maybe how we can have a student come in and chart our way forwards and recognize the bounty needs to be saved.
Yeah, for sure. I think as much coordination as we can get within the resources that are in the community and maybe Trans Mountain to help with that, to alleviate some of these problems, because definitely we don't want to go down a road where we keep people out or you know, I fully understand that the hockey parents, everybody thinks they're flush with cash, but they really aren't. So. So yes, no. Anyways, add it with gas at $1.50 plus a liter, of course not. So yes, thank you for all those comments. Moving on to item 14, economic development. Chair Frizzle, I'll just say next meeting is in 2022. Councillor Bamford is not here. The meeting is sort of today. We have infrastructure items to discuss on this agenda. Councillor McKenzie, Parks and Rec, 2022. And Finance and Audit Chair Herring is December 7th. Moving on to standing committees, joint services, we had one this last week, not much to discuss on that. Next one is January 10th. Trails Task Force, Councillor Taylor, come on board.
Yeah, so we have a recommendation here. Oh, I guess, yeah, the next meeting is December 14th, but we do have a recommendation coming out of our last meeting. And that recommendation is that the Trails Task Force Committee recommends to Council that approval be granted for Bannister Pipelines LP to upgrade the Type 4 connecting trail between Park Drive, Park and Strawberry Flats, Clearwater Village Road in the spring of 2022 as a volunteer contribution to the community of Clearwater. So I will make that recommendation. I'm happy to answer any questions if Council.
Questions on that of Council? So maybe Lucy, if you could, sorry, Councillor Taylor, can you just explain the scope of that? So I'm assuming that's going from the top of the hill, zigzagging down to the bottom of Stakes Hill.
That's right, and it'll be a fairly straightforward Type 4 trail. I think there was, you know, Bannister wanted to take on a project to contribute to the community while they're here. I think they actually had, you know, wanted to do something maybe a little bit more than this trail, and I'm sure they'll probably continue to look for opportunities there. But we're happy to work with them. This was a trail that was planned, and originally we were going to kind of use volunteers to implement this trail, and it will connect from the top of the hill at Park Drive and zigzag down to the flats, so making a more robust trail than what is there right now.
Yeah, thank you. My understanding this is a bit of a technical section, so I mean, what a great thing to add. And it's one of those things that that connects the top of Clearwater to the flats, Strawberry Flats. It's something that community has needed to fuel for quite a long time. So
And we're
second on that,
very grateful for the
seconded by
generosity.
Councillor Sim, all those in favor? And that is, oh, and you have one question, Councillor Sim?
I do actually have two questions. One,
I have two questions. One is I wondered if we could use this as a teaching moment of how this would look under our new committee structure. Would this happen the exact way it's just happened with our committee structure? More or less. So it would be seamless. We wouldn't have to wait for another meeting or anything. It would be super exciting the way it is. That's great. Second thing is are there any announcements that we could make from the Trails Committee publicly? Just some good news winter stories. Okay. Oh, lovely. Okay, great. Thank you.
So if you didn't catch that from Mr. Thomas, there's two good news stories coming from the Trails Committee on two grants that we have to wait for government approval to announce, I'm assuming. Some back and forth with the government for approval and requests for comments, and then some good news will come out from the Trails Committee, the Trails Task Force. So excellent. Okay, thank you. And that did pass. We did vote on that. Got caught in the middle. Moving on to recruitment and retention. Next meeting to be determined. Community Economic Development Task Force is tonight. Council Frizzle, 6:30. Major part of the whole conversation is basically on housing and housing needs and how to help with that. Next one is Cemetery Advisory Committee. Councillor Bamford will be the council member sitting on that, and to be determined, but we just set that one up today, so that's great. Forestry Working Group as well, to be determined. Probably will call a meeting on that one once we get rounded feedback from industry and ministry staff have time to get up to speed, so probably early in the next meeting. Community representation reports, Tourism Wells Gray, Councillor Sim, anything to report?
Nothing to report, but when they do set a meeting, has there been discussion about how that integrates into the new committee structure? Or is that something that will be fleshed out? Yeah, I just wondered, so maybe we could talk about how that ties in, if we have our own tourism and they've got their tourism. Thanks.
Okay, Community Forest Commission, nothing to announce yet on that one. Staff reports, draft infrastructure. Will.
You run the slides then? Yeah, okay. Thanks for having me. It's been a while since I've been here to discuss plans and projects, so thanks for having me. We've been working through this infrastructure master plan update for a good portion of 2021. Had discussions with district staff on the update. We're at a point now where we'd like to review and seek input and comment from council. I'm not sure if everyone's had a chance to review it, but if you have any questions as we go through this, just by all means cut me off. And if it would be best if there is some meaningful dialogue on it, it's best to have some Q&A and spur on some conversation if we can. So we'll hop into the next slide, please. The slide package, we have background. We'll go through the purpose and the scope of what this update entails. We will review some of the existing infrastructure and demands and capacity of the system. Go through our list of water and sewer projects and then talk about some next steps. So background, Urban Systems had put together a infrastructure master plan. It was finalized in 2013. It included all sectors: water, sewer, roads, buildings, parks. It had financial modeling and implementation strategy. It is still a great report. There's a lot of good information in there. Well put together, well thought out. It touched on a lot of different and important pieces. So just next slide, please. That is part of the reason then we can get into the scope of this project. But the idea was that it continues to be useful and there was no need to fully replace it. A lot of the information that was included in that report is still valid and relevant. But where we're at now is that a lot of the projects that were identified in the 2013 report are completed. Yeah. Chris, can you speak closer? Or just, yeah. How's that? Better? So a lot of the projects that were identified in the 2013 report are now done. Or the costing is starting to get out of date. 2013 costs are out of date. So that led to the need to complete the update. This will also help form a backbone for other bylaw updates forthcoming, such as the development cost charge bylaw and developing project needs and project costs for that bylaw as well. So yeah, I touched on some of this already, but the idea was that to try and focus on a 10-year timeline So some projects identified in the 2013 report are still valid, but we don't figure they fall in the 10-year timeline. So they've been noted in the report as, we called them deferred, that they're still a relevant project and of use to the district, but just when you go through and try and prioritize, they fell off the 10-year window. I think I touched on those pieces. Go ahead. Yep. So existing district infrastructure, as most people know, well 1 and 3 are just over in Reginald Small Park. Capacity of that station is around 95 liters per second. That's dependent a little bit on demands and where the demands are in the system. Well 2 operates in the 30 liters per second range. There is issues associated with manganese and Russell Creek intake. It's around that 25 to 30 liters per second. And it obviously has seasonal issues associated with turbidity and water availability during peak summer heat. Existing Archibald Reservoir is around 400,000 gallons. There's 4 pressure reducing valves within Clearwater. There's 1 in Harvey. There's 1 installed in the new well 1 and 3 pump house, and there's 2 down on the flats. About 40 kilometers of water mains, 50 of which is AC pipe. Not ideal. And most of the rest is PVC. There is some ductile iron in some of the very high pressure, for example, through the flats. Some of the high pressure locations have ductile iron. We touched on the demand in here as well. This was done primarily so that we could make sure that our long-term sizing is based on accurate and up-to-date data. And you'll see in the report a lot of times, a lot of the sizing we do is based on maximum day demand. So max usage on the hottest day of the year. This year it was the fires, June 30th, July 1st time. You can see that number bottom right, 94 liters per second was a big jump. So this is a snapshot in time, but we thought it was best and the most responsible to utilize that number, even though it's 20% higher than 2019. The 2020 data was not reliable, and there was missing key days that we thought may have actually been the maximum day demand, so that was left off. And it's worth noting on here that Trans Mountain Camp is in the 94. So how much of the Trans Mountain? I don't think it's a big piece of it, because their demand is, it's domestic use. They're not irrigating a bunch of things in their camp and things, but it is in that number as an anomaly. That's worth noting. We put up there 55% higher than other communities. That was in 2018. We've gone up since then considerably with the maximum day demand. This is an important thing that'll be touched on. The water demand, we've talked about it a number of times. It continues to be high in comparison to other communities. We used 10 years and the demand forecast for the larger items, reservoirs, supply mains, big ticket items like that are long lifespan items were done based on the existing per capita demand, 94 liters per second divided by the number of users on the system, and then an anticipated 1.5% population growth. So you'll see there 94 liters a second, the bottom left is your current MDD. That translates in a 25-year time up to 136. You can imagine the impact that has on things like reservoir storage, which are directly linked to your maximum day demand needs, as well as fire flow, supply main. You can take the 136 minus 94 call it 40 liters a second for a round number, that comes right off the top for fire flow capabilities. Because your fire flow capabilities are MDD plus fire flow capabilities. So as you start looking at evaluating the fire flow capacity of the system, these are very important numbers when we start looking at those things. So all the water modeling that was done to update this report is based on these numbers. So again, that's what I mean. That 94 is a very critical item. And that was based on reliable, what we feel is reliable SCADA information. It's not handheld reads or things like that. It is coming through the water meters at the sources. So we consider it accurate. Yep. Sewer, about 5.5 kilometers of gravity sewer. About a third is AC. There is over 2 kilometers of sanitary force main. About 2/3 HDPE and a third PVC. There's 4 lift stations, one at Clearview Street, one by Dairy Queen, one down at Raft River Elementary, and one at the hospital. So there is 4 lift stations, which services a good chunk of the existing sewer collection system. Wastewater plant, and again, this is, I think a lot of people know these things, but it's good to refresh on it. We have the headworks that was installed last year. We added a second aerated lagoon, so we now have 2 aerated lagoons, and we added a third infiltration basin to increase disposal. Treatment capacity is now at 600 cubic meters per day, which is well above the current flows and was sized to account for future development growth. There isn't, we'll get to it, but there isn't treatment capacity expansion identified in this report as a need. So the water system improvements, we'll get them into them here. So this is a summary. We'll go through each one by one. But there's 11 projects that we came up with. And for each one, we tried to, well, why don't you jump to the next slide, and we tried to give a bit of a commentary on what it is and why it's needed and the total costs. Detailed cost breakdowns are provided in the report for each project. And I can speak to any pieces of that if anybody has any questions. But the first one, leakage assessment, this was completed initially, I think it was in 2017, 16 or 17. It has been completed in the last 5 years. Majority of the leaks identified have been addressed. It is an opportunity to address some of the water usage. So it's back on the list as the first project, priority 1. Water conservation is important, and it helps with current and future demand constraints. And that 56 grand you can see there. Second one, backup power at the well 1 and 3 building. It's been shown to be actually in the DLCC lot and run power through the RCMP over to the well 1 and 3 building, so that in the case of a power outage, those distribution pumps and well pumps can still operate. Obviously, it helps with providing water source during a power outage. It also helps with the theoretical capacity, firefighting capacity of the system in the way that it's evaluated with pumps on or pumps off. So it helps with fire flow capacity as well as providing drinking water during a power outage event. Yep. Distribution pump in the well 1 and 3 building. There's an empty pump bay. There's 2 pumps. There was a large one and a small one, we'll call it. There is an empty pump bay to provide a redundant pump, given how critical this source is, and that we're now at operating at the max day command. Max day demand is now at the design capacity with the 2 pumps in. The 3rd pump is now something to consider. It would add an extra 30 liters per second to the capacity of the station.
On that, I believe we've had a failure. Recent years, is that been built?
Not that I'm aware of. Those well to or pump to? It might be well to.
Yeah, well to, yeah. No, well to, the one by Dutch Lake there, I think we actually lost. Just to highlight that this does happen.
It does, yeah. I don't know if these one, if I'm not aware of these one, the well 1 and 3.
It's not one of these, I'm sure it's the one.
I think it's well 2. But yeah, it does happen for sure. Yeah, they're mechanical. So they wear out and they fail, and yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yep. Clearwater Valley Road Supply Main. So this is the 3rd phase of the 12-inch supply main that was identified. It was identified in 2013. It was identified in previous water capacity studies that have been done to get a supply main from well 1 and 3 up to the Archibald Reservoir. The first stretch went from Harby up to Best Western. The second stretch went from here to Harby. The 3rd and remaining stretch goes from Best Western up to the reservoir. It's important. It makes a big difference in terms of the capacity. Right now, the majority of the domestic water usage comes down an 8-inch main within Clearwater Valley Road. So it is an important piece. It's also very critical. As you can see, there's no other way to get water up and down from the reservoir if there was to be an issue with that existing 8-inch main. So it's a sizing and capacity issue. It's also a redundancy issue. There's a big price tag that goes with it, but it is an important project to consider moving forward.
And question on
Yep.
that. So if you added a new 300 millimeter water line, would you still keep the other 8-inch main and use it as a backup, or
It's an AC line, some of it anyway. I think so. I think you would keep it as, then all of a sudden you have the same price, even though it's a new line, now you have a new 12-inch line. What if something happens to that? Again, you have no backup. It's a critical piece. If it's there, I think you would keep it.
it would make sense to have it?
It's actually more work to take it out. If you could keep it in, utilize it, that's how I would recommend it, is to leave it in. And if there's issues with that moving forward as lifespan actually expires on that, there's options to repurpose it for things like slip lining it to become a sewer gravity line or things like that. I wouldn't want to rip it out and dispose of it. There's other ways to utilize it in a meaningful way. Yep. Sunshine Valley Reservoir and Supply Main. This is a project that was also identified in the 2013 report. Basically extending water from the Eco Depot up the gravel road up to a reservoir location that would essentially match the existing Archibald Reservoir. So as the road kind of starts snaking up the hill, there's a large overhead power that goes through there. That's the general location. Water would also be extended down from Camp 2 Road depth. It kind of follows an existing gravel road, and I believe it ties in at Ogden. And it does a couple things. It provides additional reservoir storage, to which the district is currently deficient. It also increases fire flow to the Sunshine Valley area, as well as that industrial area along Camp 2. It addresses a lot of the existing fire flow deficiencies. Water was obviously extended up there last year, but it's a long dead end main. Basically, as soon as you turn off of the old North Thompson, that's one line all the way up. So it's a long dead end main. So looping that would also help with stagnant water issues. You have these large mains to provide fire flow, but there's not actually a lot of demand once Trans Mountain Camp is gone to flush and turn the water over in those large mains. Yep. Good. Universal water metering. We had talked about this last year, I believe, the pros and cons and costs associated with a universal metering system at that time. We evaluated a couple of options, brands, I guess you could say, and all we've done here is update the cost estimate based on inflation. There wasn't much to add to that report other than the water usage has gone up since the time that memo was published. So the same points that were made at that time still hold true.
On that point, my understanding from other jurisdictions that there's, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's grant funding for water metering. It's fairly common to get grant funding for this project.
I don't have any firsthand knowledge of that, but I would really suspect that's the truth because it's a form of water conservation, which all these grant projects are water conservation is a big piece of them. This has shown to be a successful way to implement water conservation, so I think that's the case. But I don't have any firsthand knowledge.
Okay, yeah, I think that's happened through the TNRD program. Most if not all the cost was covered through some grant program system, and I think people online can hear me, but I'll say it anyways. I think knowing what our issues are at every household, I think water meters are critical. Basically, have to be to get a handle on what our issues are with such an expansive water system.
And yeah, I guess one point I'll make on the water metering, we've put it up there. Implementation is something that I think is worth considering with the water metering. Mock billing, public education, there is ways. The purpose of the water metering isn't, it usually isn't to start charging people for their water. Sometimes it would even determine where the usage is. Right now, it's, that's part of the water leakage, is trying to identify where the usage is coming from on, the municipal mains. This is a way of determining usage once you cross onto the private side of property line, and it's starting to put together a clear picture as to where's the water going, where is that 94 liters per second going. So that's the primary intent of the water metering. And I know the TNRD is in the process of going through a water metering program, I think throughout all their water systems.
Yeah, I believe so. The intention is not for billing. It is about water conservation because the cost of construction of water systems and expansion is so expensive. The cost of, even at 5.4 million as suggested by the slide here, is quite low compared to construction or upgrading of current systems to meet demand that's being lost to leaks.
Agreed. Yeah, the offset of costs and other municipalities, I know for sure this is a way to offset large. It has the potential to offset large capital upgrades, additional reservoirs, additional water sources, larger supply mains. Like I said, the fire flow capacity, you take it right off that 94 liters per second, and then it goes down from there. So I would agree. There are a couple of grants. Having a water meter. Project 7, Strawberry Flats PRV replacement. There is 2 pressure reducing valves. Sorry, can everybody hear me online? Can you guys, you're good? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Project 7, Strawberry Flats PRV replacement. There is a PRV. There's 2 PRVs. There's one that was replaced in, I believe it was 2013 or 2015. There's an existing PRV off of Swanson. The second PRV station that services the flats is still original. It's in rough shape and in need of replacement. This is a relatively challenging project in the water table. It's no different than when we looked at servicing Strawberry Flats, which we'll get there with sewer. The same holds true to trying to put in a pressure reducing valve station, which has probably led to some of the issues with the existing PRV chamber that's now reached the end of its lifespan. Just down the road, the idea here would be to connect a loop that's absent in the Strawberry Flats water main system. Strawberry Flats, it has very low fire protection. There's a lot of 4-inch water mains down there. It was obviously designed and installed originally as a domestic system. There's not a lot you can do with 4-inch water mains. You can only push so much water through, even though it has very high pressure. But this is an option to get some redundancy in the system and improve fire flow. So that's the idea behind this project. The last couple are water main loops. We can jump to the next one. A small connection that you can see in the map, 110 meters between the school and Park Drive. An 8-inch main that would create an extra loop and some redundancy in the system and delete 2 dead end mains. And then the next one is similar. It's a 300-meter long stretch. As you can see there, it connects 2 dead end water mains on Werribee and Hillside. It offers redundancy out in that area. It does improve fire flows as well, not same size improvements as some of the projects earlier on the list, but again, it does make sense to try and close some of these existing loops that there are. And then the last, that's it. 11. The last projects in sanitary and water they fall under both, so it's captured under the sanitary. 6 projects on the sanitary side. A few of them you've seen already, but we can jump into that. So cell 2 desludging, as part of the cell 1 design, sludge survey was completed. It's called. They come with a boat and go back and forth and take a bunch of measurements of the existing sludge built up in cell 2 since 2009. This was identified as, I believe, 17% of the working volume is sludge. So you're using up your capacity, but it also, that sludge slowly migrates off and leads to quicker binding off of the RIVs as that sludge mobilizes. So there's a treatment capacity increase. It's a maintenance issue, and it should cut down on the scraping or desludging of the RIBs, which seems to be happening almost annually needed. The RIBs fill up and when they lower down, there's more sludge in there than you would typically assume for every time they fill up. And I think that's primarily because of the sludge that exists. Rapid infiltration basin. So the sewage comes in, it gets treated by these aerated cells. It gets down to a level that's acceptable to MOE, and it actually goes to these large, they look just like this, large gravel lined basins, we'll call them, and it literally just soaks into the ground. And that's how it disposes of the treated effluent. They call them rapid infiltration basins. The district has 3 of them and they operate them in sequence. Fill one up and it takes some time to drain out. While that one's draining out, you pump into the next one. And that's kind of that's how the district's wastewater plant operates. Project 2, right now, all of the district sewer comes down a siphon. It goes down, as most of us know, it comes to the low point on Robson, goes between the houses on Robson, through over to, just downhill from the fire hall and then over the bank. It's a 6-inch ductile iron siphon, which I won't try to explain, but it is a type of force main that's meant to be dosed. The dosing chamber is bypassed due to maintenance issues. It's now operating. It's operating, but it's not operating how it was designed because the upstream grill and dosing chamber are bypassed.
What does dosing do? It's working. Does that break
You
it up, or-
basically, the sewage fills up in a tank, it reaches a level, and then it's like a flush tank. Fills up this chamber, reaches a certain level, and then it drops out at once. The idea is that if there's enough flow through this main, it actually flushes out and it's at lower risk of solids settling out and clogging this.
So instead of a trickle, you're doing a rush.
Exactly. That tank is being bypassed. So now you just have essentially a gravity trickle that comes down and it's more susceptible to clogging. It's operating like a gravity system. It's not meant to be a gravity system. So there's capacity concerns with it. There's clogging concerns. It's also in a very difficult place to access. You can barely walk up it. If there was an issue with this, it would be major. I'll put it that way. It's a critical piece. Like I said, all the sewage right now comes down this pipe. So it basically takes it from the top of the hill down to the wastewater plant. That's that. Hospital lift station replacement. This is a capacity issue associated with expanded development within the hospital lift station catchment area. The existing station has not, there's obviously maintenance concerns associated with any lift station, but this project in particular is meant to expand the station to service future development in the area, as well as service the existing area that is already now contributing to it. Elementary school, hospital, Evergreen Acres. There is the catchment area is expanding since it was originally installed, which was originally just to service the hospital, which was its original intent. Dutch Lake expansion. There was a grant application made for this last year. It was unsuccessful as far as I know. The idea is to expand sewer collection to the Dutch Lake and Harvey areas. It's a large project, about 120 properties. I believe 2 lift stations, as well as a force main that goes all the way up to that siphon we were talking about by the fire hall and replaces the siphon. $8.7 million price tag. Any questions on that? If not, we can. Good. Project 5, Strawberry Flats. We talked about this in the last year as well. This would be 150 properties, 3 lift stations. Again, the idea is to get houses off of on-site infiltration wastewater systems and into a municipal collection system. Price tag's obviously high. Challenging construction. Water table will be a concern with that project.
Okay, so, sorry, you say this is a siphon system, no,
No. Pressure system. gravity to lift station pump, gravity to lift station pump, a conventional sewage collection system. Yeah, that comprises of gravity and then force mains. It was discussed as a vacuum system at one point. It's not the vacuum system, it's a pump
Yeah,
system.
sorry, that was
Yeah.
brought up to me, that a vacuum system option by somebody that's layman understanding of sewer systems.
No, it doesn't suck, it actually, it pumps it, so more conventional. This was the double up project that I spoke about, bulk water and sandy dump. You see these in other communities through the interior, a location for, a municipal location for RVs to dump their holding tanks as they leave RV locations, and as well as fill their trailers and those types of things. Looking at the right spot, where it could go, where it should go, what makes the most sense from a servicing capacity, where land is available. So that was the idea behind that project. Sorry, yeah. Yes. Yep. So where we sit now, a draft of the update is prepared. Like to discuss it, obviously today. We have met and discussed with staff. The next step would be to take feedback received today and then move forward with a public engagement process on the update as well. And then work on an implementation or integration of again, there's an update to an existing document and make sure that these documents fold together well, and it's a useful document for district staff. It's not something that just sits on the shelf. It's a useful reference. And we put a couple options there up there for other items to consider. Water conservation plan update is probably something to think about moving forward, and asset management. There's candidate replacement projects in the 2013 report that might be worth consider reviewing as well. I think that's it. Yep.
Ask online if they want any questions.
Any questions online? Head shaking, no.
Okay, any questions in the room? So much to the word.
No question's a dumb question.
I asked most of mine in the thing there, but just more of a comment than anything. I think cheapest solution to infrastructure is finding out what the problems are. We do appreciate the conservation plan. I think that came up on our last major grant that we put in there, that it would be required to have a current conservation plan.
I believe it's typical they should be
Yeah.
within the last 5 years
Yeah,
is
so-
what we see.
I have a feeling we'll have to update that before we qualify to apply for any major grants again, and I'm not sure what the last one. Not a major idea, but there's a lot of good stuff in there. My comments more so is looking at some of the development trends around town that I think maybe we have to look at where we target some of these improvements. The past, specifically the Dutch Lake sewer expansion plan was originally targeted to surround Dutch Lake actually at one point. And service properties that already have existing personal septic systems. With the demand and the pressure we're getting here for future development, capacity that we have in a lot of our systems, beyond conservation, I think we probably have to shift our thinking towards targeting expansion areas versus having one-on-one fights with landowners that may or may not want to sign on with from their septic to our sewer system. So I think that's a question for council to consider. assuming you're still seeing people
Yep.
online there, so it's just a matter of our TVs have taken a break for a second. Welcome to the world of technical techniques. So if there's nothing further, then I'll just take a second here. Okay. Which one do you think is the most?
If I had to pick one project,
Urgent?
the leakage. Yeah, leakage assessment. I say that for two reasons. First one, 3 or 4 years ago, it did identify a number of leaks, some small, some large. I think the cost is it might be the lowest cost project out of all of them. So cost wise, it's probably the most palatable. There's no impact to, roads and traffic, and it's kind of a low impact project. So, and I think it could have a high upside. It might help answer some of these questions. It's a fraction of the cost of the water meters, but it's along the same line. So that's why I would recommend that one. It was 56,000. And we had got a quote from a company, so I'm quite confident that number would get the system done. And there'd be real benefit to that. So that would be my thought. The greatest risk is the siphon project going down the hill for the sewer. Yeah.
Can you explain that, how that works? Understanding the sediment building up in pipes, so that's not functioning. That is not the sort of thing that you have with minus 35.
No, I mean, as much as it, as much as it scares me as well, it's been in place. It was the first thing installed. I think it was like 73 or 74. It's almost 50 years old. It's worked. It continues, like a lot of, yeah, exactly. But like a lot of the infrastructure in Clearwater, it was well thought out, there's but expanding and growing and more demand,
more risk with that expansion. More customers, more everything else. Okay.
Nothing else online? No, it's still fine. I believe it was actually cleaned last year. They go in with divers now to clean these reservoirs. It was done last year. I believe they reviewed it. Don't quote me on that. I believe there was an inspection done at the same time. It has not reached its typical lifespan. It's a concrete reservoir. It is undersized is the problem for the demand. So the need for a new reservoir is sizing as well as its location. I mean, you can imagine it's a long way from Sunshine Valley. So hydraulically, it's not in the best spot for some areas. Does it?
Well, is it the water main or the reservoir?
Oh.
Yeah. So that's.
Okay, I could be wrong. No, for sure I could be wrong. If it is, it's not meant to say that. So I'll.
Good. You can see people online if they have no more questions. If there's any more questions, I mean, we'll probably have more questions for you, but we'll
Yeah.
keep them offline.
Sure.
Okay, folks, I'm just gonna move over here and finish from here, if nobody minds. Because it's easier to see everybody and unplug this. So that takes us through that report, which is the draft infrastructure master plan, item 18.1. Item 18.2 is the Brookfield Bridge. There is a recommendation that council amend the 2021 five-year financial plan to include allocation of up to $123,000 for overages to repairs and maintenance of the Brookfield Bridge, with funds to be expended from the 2021 gas tax fund. I believe my understanding of this is that when you dig into things, you find things that you might not have expected in there, and that happens a lot on a lot of repairs. And we've been through this a couple times with explanations from staff. Are there any further questions of staff on this one at this point? Okay, can I move her and second her on that one, please? Thank you, Councillor McKenzie and Councillor Herring. All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you. Clearwater Transit System. There's a report in your package on usage during COVID, which is kind of surprising that we still had fairly good usage. There was some decline, but if there's any questions on that, I'll let you get to that as well. Seeing none at this point, we'll just keep moving on. Item 18. Oh, no, we're still in, are we not?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so on that thought, Councillor Sim just asked if we're still in the infrastructure portion. Councillor, I would probably normally hand this, I'm assuming I would hand this over to Councillor Bamford as the chair of that committee when I transition into that committee. What I'm going to suggest that when we go out of this meeting today, we have a little bit of a mini workshop that we lay out a script and do a mock version of how this is going to work out in the future, so that we all understand how it works, and just go through it a couple of times. Because yes. Okay, so do I have to do that now? So, motion to move out of committee in the whole. Thank you. Seconded? Seconded by Councillor McKenzie. All those in favor? Okay, so we're moving out of the committee of the whole. Now we're going to redo the motion for Brookfield Bridge. Okay, so the Brookfield Bridge, I have to read this recommendation again. The council amend the 2021 five-year financial plan to include the allocation of up to $123,000 for overages to repairs and maintenance to the Brookfield Bridge, with funds to be expended from the 2021 gas tax fund. All those in favor? Thank you. Capital Roadworks is the next one. Recommendation to amend the 2021 five-year financial plan include allocation of $20,000 for overages to the roadworks capital project paving to be funded from the roads reserve. Questions on this? Seeing none. Mover and seconder. Thank you, Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor? That passes. The Phone in the Wind projects. There is a recommendation. This is an interesting one. I believe there's one of these in BC Park. Councillor Frizzle, you want to open your mic there and see if you can type up? Okay, just give me a second and I'll mute myself as well.
Okay. Can you hear me? That's the big question. Yay. This is a really good one. It's the hospice that's putting this forward. But they've also brought it to the Wellsbury Country Senior Society, who is very much behind it, who is asking the men's shed to build the post to put the phone on. So this is really what gets me excited, is community collaboration, because it's got Interior Health, it's got hospice, it's got Rotary. Well, Rotary, I think I have to back up there, but Wellsbury Country Senior Society, the District of Clearwater, I'm excited. Men's sheds too, of course. And so I just wanted everybody to know how that is all intertwining with everybody. And I think it's a really neat project. That's what I wanted to say about it.
Further comments or thoughts on this one? It's kind of an interesting thing. It's worked for a couple of years, and just explain,
there's
what exactly.
What it is that it's an old style phone, and it's not connected to anything, but it gives people a chance to in a very nice setting, be able to go and speak to their loved ones that have passed. So they can talk on the phone if they want to, or just sit there and talk, you know. Oh, and that's what I missed out on with the Wells Great Country Senior Society, is that we want to purchase a bench to be put there. So because seniors, yes, they will maybe stand there and be on the phone, but really they like to sit. So, so that's where our connection is. So it's just a place to be able to go, because people used to go to the gravesite and talk to their loved ones at the gravesite. Well, there's so many options. That's not an option anymore, because there's cremation is happening more and more and more. So this is a way to be able to go and just spend a little bit of quiet time talking to your loved ones on the phone.
Thank you for that explanation. I'm really hoping that teleworkers can't get thrown on this line. 'Cause
That's a requirement, actually.
anyways, would you like to move the recommendation?
I would love to move the recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Sim. Thank you. Any comments or questions, thoughts from anybody else on the line? If not, all those in favor? Thank you. It's one of the, I think of all the things that I've passed or we've passed as a group, I think that's, it's out there. Okay, moving on to item 18.6, emergency management program update. There is a recommendation that staff be directed to develop a project charter that will initiate review of the district's community emergency measures bylaw number 21, 2008, and the district's emergency evaluation or response and evacuation plan, and that staff be directed to complete the review before the beginning of the 2022 wildfire season. Brief explanation of this is we're just getting our plan back to standard, or what's happening here?
So it's a substantive review of the
Okay. Okay, I think people online missed that, but I'll get Mr. Thomas to summarize that back to you at a future time. But it's basically get us back up to speed and a very detailed review of everything, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sorry. Moving on. Oh, so mover and a seconder on that one. Moved by Councillor Frizzle, seconded by Councillor Herring online with his fabulous hair today. I'm envious. I'm going for the Dom King look today, just to let you know. All those in favor? That passes. Thank you so much. Moving on to bylaws, my favorite thing in the world. Item 19.1, District of Clearwater. Sewer user fees for 2022-2023, bylaw number 258-2021. There are 3 recommendations for that. Somebody wish to move the first recommendation, or do we have questions of staff on these recommendations? It's on page 118 of your agenda is the actual bylaw.
I'll move the recommendation.
Can't hear you. You're moving it?
Yeah, I'm moving it. Yeah.
Okay, your lips were moving in slow motion, but now you're moving it in real time. Seconded by Councillor McKenzie. District of Clearwater bylaw number 258-2021, whereas section 194, 1 of the community charter allows council by bylaw to impose fees payable in respect to the funding of sewer services. Now therefore, the municipal council of the District of Clearwater, Province of British Columbia, in an open meeting assembled and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as the District of Clearwater sewer user fee for 2022 and 2023 bylaw number 25821, 2021. All those in favor? Thank you for that. And there is recommendation 2 and recommendation 3. Does somebody wish to make a motion to read the two of those together? Councilor Frizzle, seconded by somebody else there, Councilor McKenzie, both online and in person. District of Clearwater bylaw number 258, 2021, a bylaw to impose sewer user fees for 2022, 2023, whereas section 194, 1 of the community charter allows for council by bylaw to impose fees payable in respect of funding the sewer services. Now therefore, the municipal council of the District of Clearwater, Province of British Columbia, in an open meeting assembles and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as the District of Clearwater sewer user fees for 2022, 2023, bylaw number 258, 2021. All those in favor? Thank you. And that, all those passes. So we're moving on to the next one, which is water user fees, which is bylaw number 259. Somebody wish to move recommendation 1? Thank you, Councilor McKenzie. Can I get a seconder on motion 1? Thank you, Councilor Herring. Councilor Taylor can get the next 2. District of Clearwater bylaw number 259, 2021, a bylaw to impose water fees, user fees for 2022, 2023, whereas section 194, 1 of the community charter allows council by bylaw to impose fees payable in respect of funding the water services. Now therefore, the municipal council of the District of Clearwater, Province of British Columbia, in open meetings assembled and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as District of Clearwater water user fees for 2022, 2023, bylaw number 259, 2021. All those in favor? Councilor Taylor, would you like to make a motion to move 2 and 3 together?
Of course I would.
Yeah, I left read so moved, but maybe try that again so we can hear you.
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder on that one? No, you're good. Councilor Sims seconds the motion. District of Clearwater bylaw number 259, 2021, a bylaw to impose water user fees for 2022, 2023, whereas section 194, 1 of the community charter allows council by bylaw to impose fees payable in respect of funding of the water services. Now therefore, the municipal council of the District of Clearwater, Province of British Columbia, in an open meeting assembles and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as District of Clearwater water user fees for 2022, 2023, bylaw number 259, 2021. All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you. Through bylaws. There is no correspondence response required, which is very rare for a meeting. We do have correspondence information items. The North Thompson, stop me if there's something you wish to speak to. North Thompson Arts Council minutes of September 27th. Nice to see the arts still functioning in Clearwater, even during COVID. Thompson Nicola Regional District Building Inspection Services, CN Rail sustainability efforts, and Kathy Peters' presentation on human trafficking. We have no notices of motion. We have no other business. Comments from the public. Questions from the press. Anytime you need anything, just give me a call. Okay. Thank you. So we have no. So we do have an in camera. So. Motion, recommendation to move in camera that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91A, I, and K of the community charter to discuss matters relating to personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality. The the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are in their primary stages and that in the view of the council could reasonably expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were to be made public. Can I get a mover and a seconder to move into camera, in camera? Thank you, Councilor McKenzie. Somebody else, please put your hand up. Thank you, Councilor Taylor. All those in favor. Let's take about an 8 or 9 minute recess and smoke them if you got them. See you back at 4:05.